The first problem is a system that you're used to seeing. You could solve it by hand. If you looked at the key on the back, I solved it with elimination, which is when you can multiply one of the equations and add them together. So that was my method. But then I saw other people solved it with substitution. They got a variable by itself and substituted into the other equation. And I heard somebody else say they wanted to solve it by graphing. You could do that too. If you replaced a and b with x and y and you got a y by itself, then you could graph on your calculator to see where they crossed. How many people solved it by graphing on their calculator? Anybody? Nobody did that? Did anybody solve it by the method I had on the back where you multiply the first one by -3 and then add them together? A couple of you did that. And that was elimination. And did anybody solve with substitution where you get one variable by itself and then you substitute in? Some of you did that too. They're all good methods. And they're all going to work when you have two variables. When you have three equations and three variables, you can solve this by hand, but you don't have to. But solving it by hand, does anybody want to give us an idea just about how you would get started if you wanted to solve it by hand? Did anybody start? Okay. If you were going to solve it by hand, what you want to try to do is get it to look, you want to try to get it to look like this one, where you only have two variables. So what I would suggest, if you were going to solve it by hand, I would get this a by itself because it doesn't have a coefficient. So I would say a is equal to 14 minus 3b plus 2c. And then I would substitute into the a for the other two equations, 14 minus 3b plus 2c. And then I would have two equations that have only b and c in it, and then you could solve it just like you did the previous one. Okay? So the point would be get rid of one of your variables, and then go back, you'll have only two variables, and you can solve it like that. But you don't have to solve these by hand. Now, there's that Solver app that some of you have on your calculator. I did not find a good way to get that on the calculator, but I talked to next year's teachers, and they said they don't use it anyway. What they use is the matrix method. So I'm going to show you the matrix method. I have it outlined on the board there. When you have three equations with three variables, you take the coefficients of the three equations, the numbers in front of the variables, and that creates matrix A. And you take the answers, that creates matrix B. So you'll see that on your sideboard there. But even if you're looking at the video and you can't see the sideboard, we're going to do that right now anyway. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, on my calculator, create matrix A and matrix B. So you want to open up your calculator. I'm going to move mine up. And the matrix is above the x to the -1, the inverse button. So you go second, and then this one. And it should look like this. And we need to edit the matrices because we want to make them look like our coefficients. So we're going to go right to edit. The two matrices that we're going to edit are A and B. So to edit A, just press enter because it's already on A. And because I have 3 rows and 3 columns, it's a 3 by 3 matrix. So you're going to enter 3 by 3. And then you can press enter and go down. And the numbers that are going to go into this matrix are the coefficients of A, B, and C. So I'm going to put 5, -2, 4. 5, enter. Bless you. -2, enter. 4, enter. And then I'm going to put 1, 3, -2. And then 2, -1, 3. Okay, I'm going to pause there for a minute before we go and edit matrix B, just to make sure everybody has it and nobody has a question. Hold on one second. Okay, so once you make sure you have the 3 up here, you press second quit. And then you have to go back into matrix. So second, matrix. And we want to edit matrix B this time, so go over to edit and then go down to B and press enter. So a second matrix, go over to edit and down to B. Matrix B is a 3 by 1. It just has the answers in it. Okay, so it's going to be negative 18, 14, negative 7. All right, so matrix B, you went over to edit, you went down to matrix B, and it's a 3 by 1, and then you enter the answers. All right, so we want to quit out of this now, second quit. And what we're going to type is the inverse of matrix A times matrix B. That will give us the solution set for A, B, and C. So when we go back to matrix, second matrix, we're not editing this time. We just select A. So press enter to select A. We want the inverse of that matrix, so you press this x to the negative 1. And then we have to do second matrix again, because we're going to select B. And that's number 2. So it's the inverse of A times B. And that gives us your solution set for A, B, and C. All right, so in number 3, it says a volleyball is served in the air at s feet per second. This is how they write feet per second in IB with a s to the negative 1. I don't love it, but you got to get used to it because they do that in IB. I also don't love that s is both the variable and the unit. Not great, but that's what it is, okay? So s is the variable here, it's the unit here. And a beginning height of c feet. The height, h feet of the ball, and the time, t seconds, are recorded below. So this is a list of times and heights of the volleyball. The information was used to create this equation. Look at it, there's a bunch of letters in them. Some of those letters are variables and some of them are constants, okay? So h is a variable and t is a variable, but s and t, those are numbers, and we're going to be able to find those numbers out. The first one says, show that s and c can form this equation here, and is using the data up here. Did anybody figure out which line of the data would help us create this equation? I don't really see a lot of these numbers in this equation, but I do see one of the numbers in the equation. Which number do you see? The 2. So I'm going to try that one and see if that's the right one, because I see that the 2 is in it right there. Okay? So using this equation, h of t equals negative 16 t squared plus st plus c. If I put in 0 for the height, h of t is 0, that's the height. And I put in 2 for the t. All right, let's see if it's going to simplify to what they had listed in A. So this is going to give me 4 times negative 16, which is negative 64. 2s, oops, that should be a plus, right? 2s and then plus c. Sorry for my confusing plus there. That's a plus. All right, and it's starting to look a little bit like this one. What's the last thing I need to do to make mine match the one in the problem? Yeah, just add that 64. And you do want to show your steps because the question says show that, right? So it doesn't mean, is this true? They're telling you it's true. They want you to show that it's true. Okay? So notice I used the last line to make that by substituting in for t and for h of t. It says write another equation using s and c. So I'm guessing I would probably use a different line. And you can use either of them, but which one might be a little bit easier? The 118, right? Because it doesn't have that decimal in it. So I'm going to use that one, but it would work with either. Okay? So another equation. So I'm still using h of t equals negative 16 t squared plus st plus c. And this time I'm going to substitute 0 for the height. H of t is 0. The whole thing is 0. Oh, I'm sorry. That's what I did last time, right? I'm doing this one. So the height is 18. Negative 16 times t squared, so that would be times 1 squared, plus s times 1, plus c. Notice h of t, it doesn't mean h times t. H of t is just the height, and it's just 18. All right, so this is easy. This is negative 16, this is s, this is c, so I have 18 equals negative 16 plus s plus c, and I can add that 16 to combine it over here with the 18 and get 34. So I get 34 equals s plus c. So I use the values from the table to substitute in. And now I have two equations in terms of s and c, so now it says to solve the system. Now if you want to, you could use this as an opportunity to practice the matrices on your calculator. Or you could just solve it by hand because it's not that hard, right? I have these two equations, 64 equals 2s plus c, and 34 equals s plus c. And I could simply subtract them, because that would cancel out my c's, and I would get 30 equals s. And substituting that back in, 34 is equal to s plus c, 34 equals 30 plus c, and I get c equals 4. And then it says to write the equation. So to write the equation, I go back up to this one up here. H of t equals negative 16t squared plus st plus c. And I'm going to put in my 4 and my 30. Negative 16t squared plus 30t plus 4. All right, now that's the part that's new. Finding the maximum height on the volleyball, you're going to use your calculator to graph it, and then you're going to do second, trace, and find the maximum. And then the last one, to find the time when the volleyball's 1 foot above the ground, you'll just graph that y equals 1 and find that point of intersection. Okay? So that's, I'm going to be done with that, but remember the full key is on the back. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. And then you can also be working on your project or your IB questions or your math space.